Absolutely thrilled to share today's subject with you because we are unpacking Robert Arthur's classic short story, The Midnight Visitor. Now, if you think this is just going to be your run-of-the-mill espionage tale, well, think again. This is actually the ultimate lesson in crisis management, cleverly disguised as a thrilling mystery. By the time we wrap up today, you'll see exactly how a sharp mind is, without a doubt, the most dangerous weapon of all. Okay, let's dive into this. I want you to take a second and picture your absolute favorite espionage hero. Whether it's James Bond, Jason Bourne, Ethan Hunt, whoever. What do they look like? They usually have a very specific aesthetic, right? The tailored suits, the athletic builds, that undeniable air of dangerous mystery. They look like they could run a marathon and then immediately win a fistfight. Well, keep that image right there in your head because our story is going to completely shatter it. And that brings us right to the brilliant, dramatic irony of this whole setup. On one side, we've got this romantic fantasy of what a spy should be. Mysterious figures lurking in the night, the sudden crack of pistols, secret messages slipped by dark-eyed beauties. But on the other side, we have our actual protagonist, a secret agent named Azubal. And his reality is a little different. He is very fat, he's incredibly sloppy, he literally wheezes when he talks, and get this, even after living in Paris for 20 years, he still speaks with a thick American accent from Boston. It's such a hilarious contrast, and for a character named Fowler, who's a writer shadowing Azubal for the night, it is just incredibly disappointing. Now, what's really interesting here is the specific word the text uses to describe Fowler. It calls him romantic. And we aren't talking about romance in the sense of love here. As the glossary from our source points out, in this specific context, romantic means imaginative or having a fantastic view of reality. Basically, Fowler is a writer looking for that cinematic thrill. He wants the shiny Hollywood version of a spy, and instead, he gets a guy who looks more like a tired, wheezing accountant. But honestly, his crushing disappointment is exactly what makes the coming events so spectacular. And the setting certainly isn't doing Fowler's mood any favors either. Oswald lives in this gloomy, musty French hotel all the way up on the 6th and top floor. It is scarcely a setting for a romantic adventure. Fowler is feeling completely let down after spending what was frankly a dull evening in a French music hall with a sloppy fat man. But as they're walking down the dark corridor, Oswald promises him that the night is far from over. He tells Fowler that a very important paper, a highly sensitive report concerning new missiles that could literally affect the course of history, is being delivered to his room that very night. And then, the inciting incident happens. Oswald unlocks his door, steps aside to let his deeply frustrated guest enter, and switches on the light. Instantly, Fowler gets his very first authentic thrill of the day, because they are not alone. Standing halfway across the small room is another man. His name is Max. He's slender, with this crafty, pointed countenance, kind of like a fox. And in his hand, he is holding a small automatic pistol pointed directly at them. So Max is clearly not there to make friends. He is there for a high-stakes act of espionage, which simply put just means spying. Max is a rival agent. He knows all about this secret missile report that's being brought to Oswald tonight, and he casually demands that Oswald hand it over to him instead, claiming, it'll be much safer in his hands. So the stage is perfectly set here. We've got two spies, one gun, a locked room on the 6th floor, and a completely terrified civilian caught right in the middle of it all. And this brilliantly illustrates the core lesson of our explainer today. Because look at what Oswald does. He doesn't pull out a hidden weapon, he doesn't try some crazy roundhouse kick. Instead, he immediately constructs a masterful, real-time psychological trap. First, Oswald just heavily sits down and starts complaining loudly about a balcony outside his window that people keep using to break in. He plants the idea so firmly, with such annoyance, that Max completely believes it's real. Second, when a sudden, loud knocking hits the door a few minutes later, Oswald doesn't panic at all. He calmly smiles and claims it's the police he specifically ordered to check on the highly sensitive missile report. Finally, he just sits back and lets the intruder's own panic do all the heavy lifting. The suspense at this point is suffocating. The knocking at the door is getting louder and louder. "Mr. Oswald! Mr. Oswald!" a voice shouts from the hallway. Max is furious, but more importantly, he's terrified of the police. He backs swiftly toward the window, keeping his gun trained right on the fat man and his guest. And because Oswald so vividly planted the idea of that balcony attached to the next apartment, Max swings his leg right over the windowsill to hide. He tells Oswald to send the police away or he will shoot and just take his chances. The doorknob starts to turn. Max pushes off the sill with his left hand to drop down to the balcony and wait it out. The text tells us he screams once, shrilly. Then the door opens, and it isn't the police at all. It's simply a waiter named Henry holding a tray, a bottle, and 2 glasses that Ozable had ordered much earlier. Fowler is absolutely stunned. His face goes totally white. "But the police," he stammers out. And Ozable delivers the absolute chilling truth. "No," he says calmly, "he won't return. You see, my young friend, there is no balcony." Max has literally just plummeted from the 6th floor to his doom, tricked entirely by a casual conversation. So the crucial takeaway here is that Ozable's true weapon was never a gun, and it certainly wasn't his physical abilities. It was his presence of mind. When we analyze this from a learning perspective, presence of mind is defined as the ability to think quickly and act calmly and wisely, especially in a situation of extreme danger and surprise. Ozable assessed his environment, he perfectly understood the psychology of his enemy, and he weaponized Max's own fear against him, all without ever breaking a sweat. It is just an incredible display of mental fortitude. And hey, this isn't just some fun concept strictly for spy thrillers, it applies directly to our own lives. The textbook actually challenges us to test our own presence of mind against everyday emergencies. Things like a small kitchen fire, a child starting to choke, a sparking electrical appliance, a sudden bicycle accident, even something like prolonged 24-hour rain or a family member not returning home on time. How mental preparedness dictates your survival and safety is exactly what this story is highlighting for us. In a sudden emergency, do you panic and jump out the imaginary window like Max? Or do you calmly assess your available tools and formulate a plan like Ozable? Let's move to and see how this builds, because the source material actually doesn't stop at crisis management. It takes a really fascinating thematic shift right at the end of the chapter, moving from a mind in absolute crisis to a mind at perfect peace. So we're taking a quick poetic detour to look at the observant mind. The text introduces us to the concept of the haiku. If you're not familiar, a haiku is a traditional Japanese poetic form that meticulously combines form, content, and language into an incredibly compact package. Traditionally, it's just 3 short lines focusing heavily on nature, feelings, or brief, fleeting experiences. Now, you might be wondering, why pair a lesson on haiku with a tense spy thriller? Well, because the compact, stripped-down nature of a haiku perfectly mirrors the sharp, uncluttered observation required to maintain a strong presence of mind. Just listen to this classic poem by the legendary Matsuo Basho. An old pond, a frog jumps in, the sound of water. It's incredibly brief, it's quiet. This serene, peaceful nature scene contrasts beautifully with the chaotic, gun-toting spy thriller we just decoded together. Yet they totally share a core DNA. Both of them require a person to be completely, unshakably present in the exact moment they are in. Ozable notices the waiter, the window, the psychology of his enemy. Basho notices the ancient pond, the sudden movement of the frog, the exact sound of the water. It's all about hyper-awareness. Both of these texts, in their own very unique ways, are asking us to open our eyes, observe our surroundings, and truly control our minds. So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. When your own presence of mind is put to the ultimate test, whether it's an everyday household emergency or a metaphorical spy cornering you in your hotel room, will you panic or will you think like Ozable? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating material with me today on This Explainer. Stay observant, stay sharp, and I'll catch you next time.